So for everyone else watching our conversation, I'll get on with the class soon, but George was a student in the very first SASA online class I did, right around the time that COVID lockdown first started. SASA, that's Save Ancient Studies Alliance, did these summer courses, and friend and colleague of mine, David Danzig at ISOL, was just starting SASA. And he wanted to do some online courses just to kind of like bring the study of the ancient world into people's houses and just kind of make it more accessible, because for so long, in order to study these subjects, you really need to be at a university, and often at a sort of a quote unquote elite university. You know, these subjects are just not widely available. If I wanted to study, say, quantum physics, the quintessential like esoteric mystical knowledge of the universe that everyone uses as their go-to, I can go to a bookstore, probably one a few blocks from my house, and pick up a book on that subject. And these ancient world subjects just don't really work that way. I actually do own Quantum Physics for Dummies, which I bought on the lark at one point and did read also. It's pretty intense. Like the math is, I mean, at least for me, I thought it was, you know, I'm not that good at math. But anyway, so we wanted to address that, and we started this this online course that George was in, Aurelio was in it, Mustafa I think was in it too. I'm not sure if they're here. I see Aurelio nodding.
I remember Aurelio. Hi, Aurelio.
Hey, yeah. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you again too.
So that was kind of that was like the Mickey Mouse Club of our future pop star careers in the world of online ancient studies. I'll look at it that way. So anyway, so I haven't seen George since then, so I thought I would just ask him how he's been. And that's really, the SASA courses are kind of how this idea got started. So it was a combination of things. I was teaching a Coptic course at ISOL that then got moved online, and I thought, well, you know, since it's online, I can open it up to anyone. And then the SASA course really showed me like how much you can accomplish with a sort of free and open online course. Because I think the prevailing wisdom in the academic environments I had been a part of, you know, especially with Egyptology, was like, if you open things up to the public, you're going to get ancient aliens, and you're going to get Edgar Cayce, and you're going to get like, you'll never get anywhere with that. And I found the total opposite. I had this great group of really engaged people, and I learned a ton of stuff while doing it. And that was kind of like my inspiration to create these courses, because I found that I was really learning a lot while I was doing it too.
Yeah, this course is great, and it was a reading group that we had done before, an Egyptian reading group. But yeah, I mean, we have ancient aliens and Edgar Cayce without opening it up to the public. We have that stuff already. So, you know, opening it up to the public and kind of explaining or just demonstrating how not ordinary, but how real it is, how much of a, you know, it's certainly an interesting subject, but it's not something so esoteric and so unattainable that we have to invent mythologies around how to understand it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And frankly, people do that with quantum physics anyway. There's enough.
That's why it's my go-to, is because it's like quantum physics and Egyptology, for some reason, both have they're like the opposite poles of a magnet, and the cranks are just like the iron filings in the room. Like, for some reason, even though these subjects have almost nothing in common, at least nothing that's obvious to me off the cuff, for some reason they just attract this like pseudoscience, like nothing else.
I think it's, I mean, I certainly know more about the quantum physics side of things than archaeology or Egyptology or anything, even classics. But a lot of it is that the public would like to skip all the hard steps and just jump right to, you know, what is quantum physics? Well, you can certainly read, you know, lay descriptions of quantum physics, but if you really want to understand it, you need to understand the mathematics. And that's a stack of books, you know, 4 feet off the ground. That's math, it's physics. It's also, a lot, in my of opinion, research.
Very difficult math.
Yeah, very difficult.
It's not
math.
Your high school calculus type math. This is like, this is math for mathy type people, for sure. Yeah,
So
and that's
people want to skip that and they want to get right to, well, what's the answer? Well, first of all, if there was an answer and they could tell you the answer, you wouldn't understand it, or you wouldn't appreciate it. And I suspect to a degree, it's the same thing. Like when people are fascinated by ancient Egypt, what are they really hoping it's about? Like, what do they really want it to be? They want it to be something like, I don't need to learn all the mundane science and economics and all the little mundane difficulties of life that I'm woefully behind on. I could just shortcut all that and pick up, discover some secret, and now I know what the truth is. And unfortunately, to the extent that there is a truth out there, it's a very steep uphill climb. No
yeah,
matter
well,
which way you
it's in
approach
all
it.
those things. You
Yeah.
you can't separate it from all those things. I think there's a lot of value to be found. So there's been a really good conversation in the chat while we're talking about this. So Abigail said, opening more to the public might also mitigate the ancient aliens phenomenon by making the knowledge more accessible. And yeah, in response to something you said, George, it doesn't, that stuff is already out there, whether we're doing this or not. So clearly we're not the cause of that stuff. And also, I would say that I would take it even further and say that the insularity of these subjects is the cause of that stuff. And that's one of the reasons that I've always had a really sort of soft touch when it comes to pseudoscience in my field, because I try to read it in the best possible light, which is, here's someone who's really interested in this subject and finds the material fascinating and has only really gotten access through these dishonest people who are basically making money selling books about nonsense. And that's not their fault. That's really, if it's anybody's fault, it's my fault, because I'm the one who had the privilege to sit around and study this stuff for years and not have to, go to work and earn money like a normal person. So if, it's my responsibility to make sure that that's not the case. It's not their responsibility to somehow, magic access into to this information into their lives. So yeah, that's I totally agree with what you said, Abigail, and that's that's another motivation for these courses. Is I see that there's a gap there. And like in terms of practical things, if there's a career to be had making up ridiculous bullshit about ancient Egypt, then there's also a career to be had just telling people the true things about ancient Egypt. So, why not try it, see what happens? So it's better, at least morally. Can I say morally superior? Does that sound arrogant? I don't know. I feel that it is, though. I think I'm being honest. It is. Like, I'm not lying to anyone, at least not on purpose. And that's the key. If I ever lie to any of you, it will be purely by accident. But you have that one promise. Well, anyway, I guess we better get started. Maybe we'll start every class with a sort of like philosophical, kind of pondering about these things. Or I don't know, maybe we should do one of those hangout podcasts. I listen to those all the time when I'm doing housework. Those podcasts where it's just like 4 people and they obviously didn't write a single word down before they got there and they're just hanging out discussing things. Maybe I should make one of those about like the ancient world. That might be cool.
I thought that's what office hours is, Wink.
Yeah, it kind of is. I don't ever put them online. But I don't know. I mean, I'm going to think about that actually. It honestly just occurred to me when we were having this conversation. And I constantly have this feeling, as I do right at this exact moment, that these conversations are being heavily dominated by my voice because I'm the teacher, and in this position, you're allowed to talk more. It'd be cool to have kind of a thing where I have to shut up and other people get to say what they think. Because when George said what he thought, it was really engaging and informative. So yeah. Let's do more of that. Okay, we'll come back to that question because I think it's a good idea. But right now we have to get into some uniliterals. Does anyone want to volunteer to do some transcription? Looking for the little Zoom hand. If you want to volunteer, raise a Zoom hand. You can volunteer more than once. If you've volunteered before, you can volunteer again. If no one volunteers, I'm going to have to pick on someone. Oh man. I kind of want to choose at random, but I don't know how to do that. I don't have an efficient way of doing it. Peter. Yes, my Peter. Thank you, Peter.
No, thank
Yeah.
you. Let's see. Okay, so the first one is WIA. That's W-I uppercase A in MDC, and the three looking thing in transcription. Yep.
Yep.
Or that, whatever that is.
Yeah, it's a so it's sort of like the IPA symbol. Let me get my IPA keyboard, which apparently I was just using. Which is, yeah, I don't use it that often, so that's cool.
Yeah.
It's this. It's this. I've got some crosstalk here, so I'm gonna mute everyone, and Peter, you'll have to unmute yourself real quick. But I think it's that. I think it's basically that the glottal stop is often symbolized with a sort of a cup pointing, opening towards the direction that you're reading from. It's probably the least clear way I could have said that. Yeah, so it's two of those.
Like two glottal stops sitting on top of each other.
Yeah. Why?
Oh, cool.
I don't remember why. I mean, I said why as like, you know, I'm putting words in your mouth, like, because that might be the next question, but I don't remember why. I think it comes from the Berlin School in like the late 19th century when they were, you know, they were sort of very fiercely arguing that all these things are really consonants. Up till then, people had genuinely thought that like this was a vowel and this was a vowel. And of course, we now have beyond any reasonable doubt they're not, but that was once a question. So they came up with these symbols to sort of, you know, not dictate too strongly what it is, but say something about what it's like. So yeah, two glottal stops stacked, however that works.
Cool. All right. Is there anything comparable in Coptic for boat? What's the Coptic word for boat?
There are a few Coptic words for boat. The most common with it that I know is jai.
Oh, sure. Right. Yeah.
I forget where that comes from. There's the word bairi that means barge and is probably the source or a sort of a related source to English barge, the English word barge. I'm trying to think of others. I feel like there are a few words, but none of them are popping into my head. Joy is the one that you see all the time in what's his face? Lambda.
I remember Lambda. Yeah.
That's the one that you see a lot. So that's the one that immediately pops to mind because we just went all the way through that book. Then Bairi shows up in the story that we're going to be reading eventually in this class.
Cool.
So basically, the first thing that we're going to read is an edited version of the story of Wenamun that I prepared a few years ago, and I made a version of it where I kind of abridged and I removed some of the heavily fragmentary parts and just kind of skipped over them. So we're not dealing with kind of like nobody really knows what this hieroglyph is. We've got nice clean text, but it's still the full story from start to finish. And that's what we're going to be reading as soon as we start reading something. Recordings for office hours. So someone asked in the chat about, I was just double checking the chat because I had a bunch of things. Recordings for office hours. Recordings for office hours are on YouTube, and I share the link in the office hours channel in Discord. For better or worse, office hours are a patron tier benefit because that's just, you know, I don't love that, but that's just kind of how life works sometimes. So yeah, if you're interested in office hours, become a patron or email me. You know, I'm a pretty chill guy. If you tell me that you're broke and you just really want to see that one office hours video, I'll send it to you. I'm a pushover. But yeah,
just as a plug for office hours, they're really cool.
They're so
cool.
fun.
You should go. Okay, can I read the next one?
Go for it.
I had W, lowercase a, R, and W. So that would be waru, to flee. And again, my next question is there any, I really want there to be a direct relationship between late Egyptian and Coptic, and just, I know it's not that simple.
You always want there to be. All of these words I looked up in Mr. Bicycle, Aurelio. You're the one who knows how to pronounce Czech names. How do you say this? Was
Oh my God.
Vychyšl?
Vychyšl. Vychyšl.
Vychyšl. Yeah. So I looked all of these words up in there. He has a hieroglyphic to Coptic index in the back of the book. So you're actually able to go.
Wow.
You know, Czerny has the Coptic, and it's all organized by Coptic. And if you want to find something, you kind of have to guess what it probably is in Coptic, and then see if you can find it that way. I already forgot how to say his name. Vychyšl. He has a hieroglyphic index, so you can actually look things up. And I looked up every single word that that we're going to look at. So if there is no Coptic there, it's because I wasn't able to find it in any source. But you know, those sources are not, their authors didn't claim that they're complete. So if we find one, or we can make them up sometimes. Like I think earlier I made up this one. Okay, I made up for bull. Those are all very plausible, and they might be in a text somewhere that just no one's really studied very carefully. So yeah, but yeah, if you find one, let me know. Probably be something like, I would guess wool for this. If I had to guess the Coptic, I would guess something like this, which isn't a Coptic word that's immediately recognizable to me. So might even be correct. You know, wouldn't that be something? But I base that on the fact that this tended to change into a glottal stop. So actually, maybe wool and maybe wotla because of this. And then often when you see R and W, you end up with an L in Coptic. That's just kind of a very rough trend. Doubt it's very reliable. So I would guess something like that. But again, that's totally speculative and not based on anything other than kind of shooting from the hip, really rough inference based on the ones I've seen.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Next one would be, let's see, W, capital H, so emphatic H, Y, and T. So
yeah, and in this case, Y, and I'm doing it as double I just to capture exactly. I mean, yeah, we talked about that.
Great.
Yeah,
that's great.
I interrupted you, so tell me the Egyptological pronunciation.
So the Egyptological would be Wyatt or something like that. Wehit.
Yeah, Wehit.
And then Coptic would be Wahe.
Yeah. Wahe.
Cool.
Pretty close
so
in that case.
Does the if you go back into the Coptic documents, do they have like, sorry, I like maps and things like that. Would they ever, they defined oasis as that word, right?
Yeah.
And okay, so if you went to, I'm going to attempt to say the Arabic word, the Dakhla oasis, that would be part of the name, or
yeah,
whatever they called Dakhla back then. So.
I can't remember what it was called.
Again,
I'm pretty sure it was not called Dakhla. But it's actually a good question that you asked, because it segues neatly into the next thing that I was going to say. We use this word on maps. The Dakhla oasis it's this word. So our word comes from Greek, which comes from Egyptian, which is the same word.
Oh,
Wahe is oasis. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the dozen or so common words in modern English that come from ancient Egyptian. A question in the chat that is, I need to revisit this real quick. Why don't I use the Y for the double reed leaf? We talked about this in a class previously, or maybe it was in an office hour, so forgive me if I misremember. But the basic reason is that, well, there is no one simple answer, because the relationship between all these things is pretty complicated. But the double reed leaf is truly writing the reed leaf twice, in the same way that the W in English is writing two V's side by side. And if you look at any early modern English text, you will often see two V's in place of W, because the typesetter didn't have a W, but they had a couple of V's lying around. So the double reed leaf really works like that too. It is the same kind of thing. It's a doubled grapheme that adds new nuance to it. It's not exactly the same as having the thing twice in a row, just in the same way that the sound of W is not the same as making two V sounds immediately after one another. But it does go through the same development, and I like doing it this way because it reflects what's happening in the Egyptian graphemes very literally. Just as you can easily learn that two V's mean W in English or two reed leafs mean a Y sound, well, if you can do that, then you can just as easily learn that two I's mean the double reed leaf sign. So, why not just be literal? It doesn't get in the way of anything. Let's just keep it how it is. So that's kind of the logic there. Okay, good question. Peter, do you want to do some more? We got quite a few of these.
I'm happy to, unless somebody else wants to.
Do we have? Well, if you want to be next, just raise your hand at some point.
Looks like we have some takers, so I think I'm good for now.
Okay, yeah. Michael, I don't know if I've asked you to read yet or to transcribe.
I've only been here once before for the very first meeting. I've been busy with work for the other time, so yeah.
Oh, totally understand.
Yeah, so this one would be W, emphatic H, and then the lowercase a.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
And Egyptologically, how would you say this word?
Something like uha.
Yeah, good. Uha. I'm glad you said uha because this is something that people ask me about a lot. People ask me questions like, should I say uha or should I say weha? Well, it doesn't matter. Different Egyptologists will do it different ways. It's one of those things. So in any academic discipline, there are always certain shibboleths. Like there are ways that you say things that kind of reveal you as an insider or an outsider. This is not one of those. At Egyptological conferences, one lecture says uha, the next one says weha. Nobody even notices the difference. So yeah, uha is perfectly correct. And then the next one goes with it in a way. I'm going to ask you to transcribe it, and then I'm going to ask you how you think they go together.
So same as the last one, just extra W at the end. So
yeah,
uhau or something like that.
Uhau.
Yeah, and then obviously you can see the first three of the phonetic symbols are the same. So beyond that, I remember this is similar to the case that we had earlier with the bull and the stable.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember exactly what the reason is. I just remember it looks like that.
Well, that's actually correct. It's kind of loose, the reasoning, but basically, if you take the root of something, for instance, we would say that weha is a triliteral root, and its basic meaning is catfish. And then if you want to derive it somehow, a very easy way to do that is just to put an u on the end, and that can make it like the noun of something related to a catfish. In the case of bull, cow, and stable, we had ichet, so bull and cow, masculine and feminine, and then ihu. So we just took the word bull and put u on it, and that became a different noun that's related to bulls or cows in some way. Interesting. So yeah, it is very loose.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
Can you also do that by putting a T on it? I think maybe in Middle Egyptian you can nominalize a verb by putting a T on it, or turn something into a noun by making it a thing by feminizing it.
You often can. It's not a simple rule, or at least it isn't a simple rule in my head. So the thing you said about verbs, that is only verbs that are called tertiae and firme. So verbs, third week verbs of the third week class. So they're verbs of the form strong radical, yod. Those verbs are made into an infinitive by changing the final yod into a T. So for instance, ini means to bring, inet means bringing as a concept. So it's not always the case. That rule got generalized in late Egyptian, as we'll see in this text. So verbs that didn't originally weren't of that verb class started getting T's added to them. And then it's kind of a general, it's also a general rule that if I wanted to, for some reason, say female catfish, I could say uhat. And that probably would have been intelligible in the same way that that you can do that in, you know, Spanish. Gato is cat, gata is female cat. It seems like a fairly common thing. I mean, I'm not a native Spanish speaker, obviously, but that seems totally reasonable. So I feel like if you were to do that, an Egyptian reader would understand that that's what you're doing. They'd be like, oh, it's lady catfish, whatever that means. That also kind of stops being true in late Egyptian. In late Egyptian, if they want to mark something as female, they normally put the word hemet after it. So that word that meant wife in Middle Egyptian kind of comes to mean just generically female, and it can be used adjectively. So you kind of see them doing things different ways over time. And the reason for that is probably that the final T, as you can tell from all these Coptic examples, wahit becomes wahe, no T. I mean, that's the only example I see in front of me. But because that final T was not pronounced anymore, it kind of stops being all that useful as a marker of gender on the absolute forms of words. So they start adding an adjective. It's a really complicated story, but I would say for now, since we're kind of still just starting out, it's a good idea to just observe trends like that, and then you know, kind of infer them yourself, but don't believe everything that you think. You know, like kind of wait to see whether that concept is disproven, or ask me about it, especially in office hours. Office hours is perfect for those kind of things. Thanks, Kevin.
So,
Michael,
out
oh,
of
sorry.
curiosity, would the Coptic for fishermen be something, or maybe not Coptic, the late Egyptian be something like waha or something like that?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to do with this final ein, to be honest, but we can do at least this far. Pencil. We can do, this would have been a stressed A type vowel. There must have been another vowel right here because we need a syllable boundary here for that to become an omega in Coptic. Omega only shows up in what were previously open syllables, which means, you know, we can't have a consonant immediately after the H, or the H would go on to the previous syllable and close it. This would have been a pharyngeal H, so I need to mark it that way with a little cross. And then probably an ein still, and then probably again a short type vowel. But then the thing with ein is that it is a consonant, but it's a consonant that mingles very freely with vowels. You know, for example, when I was living in Egypt and I was interacting with, you know, other non-Egyptian people who are speaking Arabic as a second language, you'll see a lot of people who speak languages that don't have pharyngeals approximate it by using an ah type sound, because ein and other pharyngeals always affect the neighboring vowels to make them sound quote unquote darker. So they pull them back in the mouth and kind of pull them down. So non-native speakers will do that with their vowels without actually putting the consonant. So all of that is to say that without breaking the syllabification rule, this could also be something like this without really having that vowel that we need right there, because the ein kind of blends in with the vowels and it's not really before or after them, it's kind of with them. Yeah. So yeah, something like that,
Okay.
I would guess.
Okay. So late Egyptian still has the ein in places like that. Okay.
Yeah, definitely does.
Okay,
we
cool.
know because they spell things so reliably. Later on, they start mixing them in spelling, so we can tell that they're no longer distinct.
Okay.
Do you want to do
Interesting.
another one? This one's kind of fun.
Yeah, sure. So this would be W, and then like the sh thing, it's like the S with like the extra little thing on top of it, and then B.
Yeah, and I'll give you some terms here. The S with the thing on top, we call that thing a hachek in Egyptology, which I think comes from Czech. I think it means hook in Czech, but it is the common term used in English as well. And this letter we often call an esh or a shin, depending on who's speaking. You kind of have your choice of that. So W shin B or W esh B.
Okay, cool. you want me to do the next one too?
What does, I interrupted you before you
sorry,
could
sorry, what-
give me the
yeah.
pronunciations.
So Wesheb or Usheb.
Yeah, Wesheb or Usheb, and then the Coptic.
Wolf or something like that.
Yeah, it could be Wolsh or Wolshev. If you want to put a little dummy vowel in there, that's fine too. And you actually might have seen this word before. It shows up in a very common museum object. You know those little little short like blue figurines that are found in tombs all the time?
Actually,
Shabtis.
Ushabtis.
Shabti.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're called Ushabti or Shawabti. And it
Both
means
of them.
basically answerer. So yeah, it comes from this verb, which we know from Coptic as Wolshev. Cool. Thanks, Michael. I'm gonna go to one of our other volunteers. You did a great job. I think Emmanuel, you raised your hand next. Do you want to do some of these?
Yes. Okay. B-I-N. Would be bean.
Bean. Yeah, and the Coptic?
Vo'on.
Bo'on.
Vo'on.
Yeah, Bo'on. Yeah, did I say Bo'on? Bo'on. So yeah, so the Coptic, we get something like this, or you know, whichever B you want. I'm not really concerned with that question right now. So in some way, this must have been B, A type vowel, stressed, glottal stop, probably short vowel, and then N, which means that this reed leaf non-initially also sometimes changed into a glottal stop, which is kind of interesting and complicated. Not totally clear why. And yeah, and then we can reconstruct it earlier as ba, probably something like bayan or vayan. Good. What about the next one?
B-I-K. B-I-K.
Yeah. Beak, and then in Coptic, bake.
It would be egg, veg, or also.
Saying this B. Yeah. Yeah. Vake or vach. So the same thing here. Notice we have the same middle reed leaf, and that complicates things a little bit. Here we have, I'm just going to use the IPAC for the palatalized plosive. So this is something like kya, essentially. So from this, we really want to reconstruct something probably, where am I going with this? Something probably like this. I used the wrong consonant. I'm sorry, I was looking at the previous one. We want to reconstruct probably something like this. Vaik, and then, I put this in the wrong place. How do I do that thing where I move it? I'm just going to erase it, start over, because I made too many mistakes in there. So previously, before this, we probably have something like this, like, and then that probably comes from the thing that we really want to reconstruct, which is this, and then ultimately something like this. So I think there are a bunch of cases like this where the eta appears to come from a diphthong originally, so an I to A transition, just like you have between Latin and Italian and French. You know, French orthography still has the things written as I, but they're pronounced as A. So we probably have that sort of transition in Coptic. This is one of the sources of eta in Coptic. The other is from a U-type vowel. So be careful when reconstructing eta, because it comes from at least two sources. And I think there's another one that I just can't bring to mind right now. Etas in Coptic come from multiple sources. So yeah, and you might also recognize this when I reconstructed it. You might have seen a familiar name in that reconstruction. If anyone's ever played Assassin's Creed Origins, This is the name of the main character, Bayek. His name comes from this Egyptian word, which is kind of fun. Okay, you want to do a couple more, Emmanuel, before we move on?
Yeah. Yeah. The next one is N. N.
Just N?
Yeah.
I see something else over here.
Ah. Then.
It's Ben. Yeah, the negation, one of the negative particles in late Egyptian is Ben. Somehow it is Ben. Yeah, thanks for the question. Somehow it becomes just N. It might never have been Ben. It might have been something like men or then. Not totally clear what value this grapheme represents at this time. There are cases, I know of one case where a late Egyptian papyrus has Ben in one case and then has Eni, the actual word Eni, in another, which we know never began with a B. So it's not totally clear that this B is really being pronounced. Can I define particle? Great question. No. Particle, no, I can't define particle. I can only define particle as, in terms of everything it's not. A particle is not a noun, a verb, an adjective, an adverb, a conjunction, an interjection, or any other known part of speech that you might list. Particles are kind of like fish in biology. It's just whatever's left over after you've named everything else. It's just a catch-all term for, I don't know what to call this thing. So yeah, it's kind of a cheat, honestly, to say particle, but you know, got to call it something.
But it means something negative, right?
No, it doesn't necessarily mean negative. You mean the word means something negative. N means
Correct.
negative somehow. Yeah, and it's used in specific grammatical ways, which we'll learn about once we start seeing sentences. But for now, all you really need to know is that it's, you know, it's like the English word not, basically.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Good question. Thank you very much, Emmanuel. I think I'm going to go to one of my other volunteers. We got quite a list now. JJ, do you want to do a few of these?
Yeah, thanks. The next one we have sky, heaven. The Egyptological pronunciation would be pta.
And we normally just say pet, but you can pronounce it pata if you want to.
Pta. The Coptic is pe, so probably
right.
yeah, like the T may be a glottal stop or something. Pet.
Yeah, it may be a glottal stop. It might be an unreleased T, so literally pet, where you actually put your tongue in the position of making a T, but you just don't t afterwards. Or it could be a glottal stop. We're not totally sure what the exact phonetic realization of that is. But it also doesn't matter because people can't really hear the difference between those things.
Okay, so the next one, raise, lift up, carry. Phi, F-A-I. And it's the exact same in the Coptic.
Isn't that nice when that happens? Phi. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same by just sheer coincidence. Wait, what's this called? Oh, shoot. I had it and then I lost it. Never mind. There's a word for this in math where like, it's kind of like the zeros, but not exactly. It's where like a function produces its same value. There are these rare little points where you go through all this complicated derivation and you end up with the same thing at the end. And I think those are really kind of fun and intellectually. Eigenvalue, nice. Yeah, that's actually a really good choice of term. Yeah, it's almost it's like eigenvector, really. If you think of where, I'm not going to go off on that track because that's yeah, that's going to get a bit hairy. And again, I'm not that great at math, so I kind of suck at it. JJ, do you want to do a couple more? These go together too.
Yeah, these are, I think, just slightly different. I think the next one for worm is faunch or finch, faunch. And then harsher T of the font or fent.
Yeah. And the reason that I included both of these, so this is basically a historical progression, but at the time of the text that we're reading, this process is not totally completed yet. So a lot of these second T's, what we call second T, the T with the line under it, a lot of these in Egyptian, in Middle Egyptian that have second T's become first T's in Coptic. So there's kind of a, there's a fronting of the consonant. The consonant is actually moved forward in the mouth from the hard palate to the alveolar ridge. So we go from ta to ta, which obviously sound very similar. But you'll see them written both ways. So in late Egyptian, you might see it spelled the slightly older way or the slightly newer way. But because writing is conservative, we can reasonably guess that both of these would have been pronounced identically. And then we can see that by the time of Coptic, this process was totally complete. It's pronounced funt. So yeah.
Okay.
Fun stuff.
I can do a couple more if you like.
Sure.
The next one, in, with, from, is just
Yeah. That's another one that's identical.
And then the next one is an M and an R sound. I wrote a T for some reason, but I recognize it as the R. So mar or mer.
Yeah, and this one in transcription, we often write it with a dash because it's actually two words. And some people actually spell it. Oh, wait, I'm borrowing Alan's J's. Let me use my own system. Some people actually spell it this way, E-M-E-R. So it originally, the meaning was originally the one who is in the mouth. And it's, this is a lot of stuff that we haven't got to yet, but it's actually a reverse nispa. So nispa is an adjective derived from another word. In Egyptian, these adjectives are made by adding an E at the end of the word. So imi doesn't just mean in, it means the one who is in. And literally the one who is in the mouth, but in this case it's reversed. It's the one in whom the mouth is, like a spokesperson. And it basically, this word basically means boss or overseer. Yeah, that's a pretty elaborate path using some concepts that we haven't covered yet. So
maybe I thought IMI are much more logical if it is like Emir. I don't know, because of the Arabic word for actually overseer to Emir.
That word is definitely not related. I think actually, it begins with ayin in Arabic.
No, it is.
Does it? I'm thinking of a different thing.
No, it is. Start with Elif.
Okay. I'm thinking of a different word then.
Much more useful, in my opinion, in this context.
You mean I should translate it as emir?
Emir, yeah, emir with double yod, Egyptological yod.
I worry that that could be misleading. I'm actually going to transcribe it just like this for now, because that's what we have written, and I really strongly prefer to write what's written in the Egyptian. I mean, if transcription has any use at all, it's to tell us what was in the Egyptian, and it does a pretty poor job of that already. So I try to make it as close as possible. I'm not going to use the term emir, Mustafa, because I worry that that could be misleading, because it's not the same thing as emir. It's not the same. It's not the same status, and it's also, I feel like it's much broader. I'm not sure. I'm going to leave it as overseer for now, or I could even. I'm really tempted to just write boss, because it is kind of, it is that generic in Egyptian. It's, you use it for everything. Someone in the chat mentioned, I prefer the one who is as the mouth, so the one who is acting as the mouth, or the mouthpiece of their superior. Yeah, that actually seems more correct to me. I think that's right. I think it's the one who is as the mouth. We haven't got to talking about all the different roles that this M, oh, thank you. The emir has an aleph. What I'm thinking of a root, there's an Arabic root that's like Ein MR. I thought they were related, but I guess they're not. Yeah, it's definitely a much higher level thing though. Regardless of my very imperfect Arabic knowledge, I know that Emir is something much higher up than Fenchurch. Do you need to be doing that? Hey, stop it. Why are you doing this? Okay. We can't get through an hour without a cat interruption. Oh, it has to do with building. Okay. Yeah, it's basically just boss. It's just boss. And it survives in some compounds, like Lashoni, which I believe comes from Mer Mashah, which means something like general, but army leader. So it survives as just Leh. That's really all we get from it. So obviously quite a lot is missing there because it's been so abbreviated. She's very cute. She's very obnoxious. She does this thing that we call wisha wisha, which is a term that my wife invented. Very precise term though, because she likes to walk up to random objects and just rub them with her front paws. And it makes that awful noise that you heard in the background, like somebody, drawing lines on a chalkboard with a piece of chalk. Anyway, okay. Wait, who was just reading? Who was just doing these? I already forgot.
That was me. I can keep going, or you can call someone else if you'd like.
Okay, I'll go ahead. You had a few, so I'll go ahead and go to somebody else. But thank you very much, JJ, for helping with that. Kevin.
I can. Yeah, maybe.
Mustafa, can you, oh, Kevin lowered his hand. So George, I think George already went. So Mustafa, why don't you go ahead and I'll come back to you, George.
Wait,
Wait,
I can go if you.
You didn't intentionally lower your hand. Okay.
I lowered my hand because you called on me and I didn't need it up anymore.
I see. I'm sorry. And then it's like icing the kicker. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go Kevin, Mustafa, George. Okay, so go
for
it.
So we got also MR Aleph, MR small a.
Yeah, I can't remember how I transcribed this. How did I know I transcribed it a slightly weird way.
Okay. And that would be Meira in Egyptological pronunciation.
Yeah, Mera.
Mera.
I think I was saying M. Ra. I think it's actually like this. I think it's two words. M. Ra. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good enough. How about this next one? Oh, this is a tricky one.
M-A-N, M small a N.
Yeah, except this is another example of that thing where M followed by this hand is actually just M. It was originally a biliteral that has lost its biliteral quality, so it's actually just men, and then the Coptic.
There's not. Mon.
Emmon.
Right?
Emmon. You say both M's. Emmon.
Emmon. Okay.
Yep.
Emmon. And this is M-N-T-W.
That's right.
And on the one before, is it possible, is sometimes the 3 hashes a W, or is that just never in late Egyptian?
So a lot of Egyptologists transcribe the 3-stroke or the plural sign as a W because we believe that the standard morpheme for marking a masculine plural was a final W. That's actually a really tricky question. In some cases, it's very clear that we're sort of over normalizing the system. So Egyptologists will put a W because they see 3 strokes, but we often don't actually have evidence that that W was really there in the plural of that word. So we're kind of generalizing a rule. So I prefer not to transcribe it at all. It really is just a classifier. And it just means plural. So it doesn't necessarily have any sort of phonetic realization. If you think about, if we were to write in English, if we were to always transcribe the plural sign in English with an S, it would lead us astray really often. We wouldn't be able to have sheep and sheep. We'd only have sheep and sheeps. We wouldn't be able to have ox and oxen. We'd have ox and oxes. We wouldn't be able to have child and children, or even brother and brethren. We would only be able to say brothers. So I think it's a bad idea to be that certain of our own reading of a language that's been dead for 3,000 years and that none of us has ever spoken. So I prefer not to do that, but that's why people do it when they do it.
Okay. All right. The next one. Oh, okay. I'm on. It would be mentu or natol.
Natol. Yeah. Oh. And it's this word previously was written without the M. And so the M seems kind of superfluous. I still transcribe it, but it's quite likely that the M is not totally there. The flexibility between M and N sort of first started to become really prominent in the language in late Egyptian. So you often have cases where M's and N's are written together, and it's not clear that you're meant to choose one of them. It could be the case that they're like, well, it's that MN type sound, that sound that can become one or the other. So we might be meant to choose, but I don't. So yeah, same thing here.
Does the NT in Coptic become a D, like a duh, like it would in Greek? Like
no.
duff? No.
No. The D, the T is probably pronounced much like a D in this case because it's between two other voiced sounds, but the N is still present. And in a lot of Coptic manuscripts, this N will have a superlinear stroke to show that it is meant to be pronounced either syllabically or with a epenthetic vowel that kind of is around it somewhere. Oh yeah, good. Sorry, I missed this earlier. The classifier here, these hands, it's kind of like saying no. That's what it's showing. And it always goes on negative things. So yeah, sorry, I missed that. This is also a classifier in this case because it's plural. And in this case, no classifiers for a couple. So I guess, Kevin, I'll give you a couple more of the pronouns.
Okay. It's MNTF, and Egyptologically it would be Mentef, and then it would be Nataf,
Yeah,
right? Nataf. The next one would be MNTK, Mentek, Egyptologically, Natak in Coptic. And the next one is a difficult one again because we got the M and the arm together.
Yep.
And I know it can be pronounced and transcribed several ways in Middle Egyptian. I think it's but in this case I would just guess N-KY.
Yeah, that'll work. M-KY is fine. And then how would you say it?
Maki.
Yeah.
I think isn't I know in Middle Egyptian it's pronounced me sometime with a long E. Like,
oh yeah,
as a
this is me. This here.
Yeah.
So this might be transcribed me also. I normally just transcribe it as M because it very clearly is just M later on. But the M with arm combination is a bit of a tricky one. We'll see tons of examples of it and you'll eventually just get used to it. Once you learn all these words, you'll just know which one you're supposed to use, but it can be tricky, especially in a new word that you haven't seen before. It's hard to know whether it's me or just M or truly M plus ein together. There's a good question about the plural strokes on this word. So if there are plural strokes, Does it mean there are not? Not necessarily. The plural strokes show up on this word a lot. It can mean either one. It's something like non-existent X. So you say men, whatever. Men a heap chafe or something, right? There's no house in the desert, something like that. I just made up a dumb sentence, but you can do the same thing with the plural. And it can really go both ways. Like there's no house in the desert, or there are no houses in the desert. Those mean the same thing. So it's a little ambiguous in that regard. But yeah, great question with the plural strokes there. When there's no classifier and words run together, do you have to just get used to patterns to pick out the separate words, or is there some type of hint they are separate, or are they smushed together like German likes to do? It does like to do that, doesn't it? You can't always tell where they're separated. In the first text that we're going to be reading, I actually put spaces in because I kind of don't want you to be, I want to create stair steps, right? We're climbing this mountain, and I want to put steps in place to guide you on your way. That's the whole point of a class, really. So I put spaces in. Later on, there are not spaces, but it's super easy because there are either classifiers or you know the words. So the words that are written without classifiers tend to be the most common words in the whole language. So they are thoroughly in your vocabulary by the time you get to a raw text with no spaces or anything. So it's really not an issue to split the words. People always ask me about this, and I can tell that it's a sort of anxiety that new students have. But I can promise you, with not that much experience, you will forget that you were ever worried about that. It really is one of the easier aspects of reading this language, oddly enough. Yeah, okay. And then we have Mustafa. I'm going to give you a few of these. Let's see. Let's do this set here. Oh, thank you very much, Kevin, for your answers. Mustafa, do you want to do the next few?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Mesah.
Yep.
S H. Mesah.
I'm not trying to trick you or
Mesah.
anything. Yeah, they're all the same. And so what do you think I'm trying to show you here?
Actually, those are different combination. Especially the S consonant. It is different writing forms.
Yeah.
And there
so
is
originally this was a different sound, but they've merged.
Yeah.
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 Go ahead. Sorry.
A couple of theory about thunderbolt means much sounds much more like Z. Z. The other theory about it is same, but just a different form, because it is more small and more portable to inscription, something like that.
So you're saying it can be like a graphical variant, sort of like it's just a different way of writing the same sound, which is absolutely the case in Late Egyptian. These two letters make identical sounds. They're really clearly interchangeable with one another. Earlier, especially in Old Egyptian, we believe that this sound probably originally had a th sound, like in the English word think, and then it merged with S. So you can, if you've ever seen that, I'm sure everybody's seen it. There's like this viral video where it's like the guys in the Coast Guard, and something comes through on the radio and it's like, help us, we're sinking. I think it's a Berlitz commercial. And the guy on the other end of the radio is like, what are you thinking about? And it's like, go to Berlitz and improve your English. You can remember it that way, right? Like some people mispronounce the th sound as an S sound. That probably happened in one dialect of Egyptian, which caused these sounds to merge, which means that by the time we get to Late Egyptian, these are the exact same. They're both just S. Sorry for my terrible accent in that joke. Okay, and then classifier question. So Crocodile's
Yeah.
pretty obvious. It's crocodile. What's this classifier, Mustafa? Do you remember what it is?
Sure. It is a tail, tail of an animal,
Yeah.
and this determinative used for more identifying or most mammals and most mammals, reptiles, something like that.
It's pretty consistently used for
it is-
mammals, actually. It seems to mean mammal, although they were a little loose on their biological taxonomy. You know, they didn't have genetics or evolution or anything like that, so they probably didn't fully understand that there are these like you know, taxonomic categories of animals. So they sometimes use it for reptiles, or you know, like a crocodile has a lot in common with a mammal, even though we know, of course, that biologically it's a reptile. It's large. It has a tail and 4 legs. It, you know, it's if you didn't know about the biology, you might think a crocodile is more like, I don't know, a sloth or whatever, any sort of like random quadruped, than it is like a snake. And snakes, they tended to group with worms. So, you know, they kind of went off of appearances. So this classifier usually means mammal, but it can be applied more generically than we would, just because they didn't have the precise biological understanding. And then 2 more that are really just one.
Okay, me, right? Moot.
Why do you say moot? Because you know it's supposed to be there.
Yeah, it is. As I saw, the most of Egyptological studies, it is written with this word written with parentheses.
Yeah.
W, because probably it is same root with Semitic mot, something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, you can do it with the
Because
parentheses. You can do it with just a regular W if you're comfortable. Like, I know what this word is. I know it's moot. I'll write it this way. Or you could do it quite literally and just write exactly what's written in the Egyptian. Really, any answer is fine. It becomes mu in Coptic, which means to die. Not the sound that cows make.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have to move pretty fast, but thank you very much, Mustafa. And I'll come back to George real quick. George, do you want to just do a few of these to wrap us up?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so this is MTWF, which would be metuf.
Yeah.
And it just becomes, is that an F? Nef?
Yeah, becomes nf. Yeah, so quite a bit of phonological change there. Some dialects do often have the T in them, but the one that we're working from does not. A quick question about classifier. Is he holding a stick because he lost his fight? I think he's suiciding himself by hitting himself in the head with a stick.
I thought it was just a guy lying on his side, like on the ground, like a dead body.
Could be that also. Could have something to do with like the opening of the mouth. Big conversation about the opening of the mouth on Discord. It could
I thought it was a slain enemy. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, it could be a slain enemy too. It's a pretty iconic depiction of a slain enemy. So yeah, it could be any of those things. Okay, so coming back to metuf or nf, which has obviously changed quite a bit. And then one more.
MTWTN, and I guess the W in parentheses, but maybe not. Maybe we leave it off here, but it's metuiten.
Yeah, metuten. And then in Coptic.
And teten.
I'm going to throw you a soft. Yeah, that's right. In teten. I'm going to throw you a softball to end us because we're running a little over time. What's this last one here?
It's just N.
It's just N. It's the most common word in all of Egyptian. It's just N. It's so common that they often forget to write it or write it twice because it's just like it's the confetti of the Egyptian language, this N. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, George. I think I'm gonna stop us here because we're already over time. Thank you everyone for coming. I'll put the video up soon. The live stream will be available until I put the new video up. And then last final plug, this class is patron supported. If you want to support me, go do that. If you want to join office hours, which all of the members of office hours are telling you are super duper fun, and they are, you know, join at the advanced student level, and you can come to that too. And I'll send you the videos. So yeah. Okay.
When are they? When are those office hours?
One is, it's kind of tough with the time zones. So one is tomorrow at, remind me of your time zone, George.
I'm on the East Coast, but is this up on the Patreon somewhere? Because the videos, I couldn't find it.
It is, yeah. So so you joined later, and I couldn't figure out whether you can see things that I've posted before you joined, because I don't actually know, because I can't see from that angle. I can only see from my angle. So send me an email about that.
Okay.
Let's chat about it and figure out what's going on with that. But yeah,
Okay.
the office hours, I'll just tell you for your sake right now, they will be at noon tomorrow for you. And then at, gosh, it will be quite early.
7:30 on Wednesday?
7:30. Yeah, 7:30 on Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. And I will see you all very soon.
Yeah. See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you.